All right, welcome everybody to the FAAB podcast. I'm really excited once again to have on a fantastic guest. Today, I have for you guys Frankie Fihn. He is the author of Beyond the Agency Box. He has been in digital marketing since 2007. He's an entrepreneur, a speaker, and an author. He has written for several magazines, and he's been featured in numerous podcasts and articles and plenty of stages all around the world. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me.
Tyler, it is awesome to be here with you, brother. So thank you for having me.
Likewise. All right, man, let's just dive right into it. So you wrote a book, which I think is really, really cool. I've had write a book on my list for a long time now. And, seeing yours out there has just like bumped it up a few notches on my list, I'd say. I think it's a really, really cool thing. So I want to talk a little bit about something that you write about and talk about, which is a lifestyle agency. So what exactly is a lifestyle agency and how do you create one?
Well, firstly, brother, I'm just going to give you that push and say, write the book already. It's
Yes.
it is so worthwhile on so many levels. I think actually the most amazing thing, and I think when you reach this level, you'll experience that as well, in the sense of like, it's just really cool that strangers write you and say, you changed my life.
Yeah.
And that when you get that far into the business, that it's really just the cool story. So I would suggest you do that, because there's so many people you're helping already. It would just formalize it and reach a bigger audience.
Love it. And then you can add author to your intro.
Yes.
I mean, that's a pretty sick intro you got there. I love it. I wanna add that to my little list. But tell me, so I hear that term a lot, lifestyle agency. How do you create and maintain one?
Well, I'll just tell you what it is for me. So I actually began the agency space. I started an SEO agency in about 2007. Well, I say I started it, I made exactly $0 my first 2 years, and had the father-in-law saying, "Why don't you just get a real job, buddy?" And but after a couple of years, I really did build something really, really cool, but nobody tells you this. And for me, it was the easiest business in the world to build a prison. Like, I just suddenly had clients who were demanding meetings, and my inbox was always blowing up and my text messages were blowing up. And so I found, like, the more I had success with like clients and finances, the more I was just like tethered. In fact, I can remember, like, there was a period where I was probably working like 80 hours a week, every week. People would be like, "You're so lucky you get to work on the internet." And I was always like, "You're so lucky that, on Sunday night, you're not sitting in a dark room trying to catch up on your emails and things like that." And so I learned really, really quickly that it's one of those things that you can easily have clients demanding your time. And so to me, like, what a lifestyle agency is to not have all those demands on your time, where you actually serve clients in a way where they don't demand meetings and they don't demand time, and in a way where they're actually happy about it. I don't want to leave that detail out, because that's kind of an important one. But doing it in such a way where then you get to actually have a life, where you get to, like today, I wake up and I go every day with my daughters to the beach. I shouldn't say every day, like probably 5 or 6 days a week, we go to the beach. And a lot of that is really understanding the structure of how to like really communicate with clients more than anything than it is. And when you do that, it allows you to have an agency that's actually kind of fun. Because my first agency, even though I was financially successful, I was like, wanted to put a bullet in my brain like pretty much every second day. And I'm sure anybody
Just
who's
killing yourself at work.
Yeah.
It's like you got the success that you want, but you gave yourself a job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
It's like
And
the thing we were
a
trying
double
to
job.
avoid. We gave ourselves the job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love the concept of a lifestyle agency. Like, for me, it was the same thing. Like, I wanted to get, me personally, I wanted to get like a hold of my own, at least feel like I had control of my own destiny and like control of my own finances. I wanted to, instead of like working for this job that could let me go at any time, right? And then spend my personal finances into whatever could happen there. I wanted to just feel like I had more control over, my pay increases, and stability in paying my own bills. And those were like the big drivers for me.
Yeah.
And so you can do that. And when you focus on that and you drive in, then you can often, like you said, build that prison. And I did that to myself for quite a while. But as you know, as you start learning systems and processes, bringing in contractors, I think you realize that a lot of the, if not almost everything within an agency, you can bring in trusted, reliable people to do those things for you, and then kind of have that freedom that you want, in addition to the financial security which you were initially after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would also add, like, I think a lot of us, like I've always said, like in the agency space, none of us really came through as like trust fund babies. Like, as far as I know, there's nobody who's just like, I inherited $20 million, so I want to run a Facebook ad agency.
No, I
It's
don't
just,
never hear that.
and so I think a lot of us had these corporate backgrounds too. And I would say all the things like you said, wanting to be in charge of your own destiny, wanting to be able to control how much you could earn or not earn. And as well, I would add, I just fucking hated meetings. Like, I grew up into this corporate-y thing, and like, meetings about meetings for when the next meeting. And so when I started having success,
Me
like
too. And like, do you ever, like, when you were in those spaces, were you ever just like, when do we actually do things?
Yeah.
Like, we are in meetings all day, and like, when do we actually go and do the things that we talked about in the meeting? Like, is that supposed to be at home, like on our own time? Or like, my partner, it's so funny because he is in a company, like a dental insurance company, and they meet non-stop. Like, it's just, I constantly ask him, I'm like, when do you actually like do the things that you guys talk about in the meetings? Because it's just like, and now since COVID, like, they, like many businesses, they haven't gone back to the office, so it's just Zoom after Zoom after Zoom after Zoom, and I'm like, God, like, I can't. No, I hated meetings. And I also I hated, because when I started in the agency space, I came from like a digital marketing entry level 9 to 5, to where I was building my agency on the side, and left that. So I got a little taste of like what it was like to be like the in-house person for a few years for digital marketing. And it, like, they will hire you because you know how to do social media, and you know how to do, like, they'll hire you just because you're a millennial when I got hired, because you were younger and like you knew how to do it. And then they would try and tell you how to do your job. And I'm like, why am I here? Why are you trying to tell me how to do what you hired me to do? There were just so many things. I think I have a problem with authority. Like, I had to be my own boss.
I think we all make bad employees in this world, but that's partly why we have that autonomy to be able to do it ourselves, and to be able to choose our clients. Because I think there's nothing worse than when you work somewhere and you just like, you have kind of a bunch of bozos on the team and you don't really have any say in that. One of the beautiful things about doing it yourself is, you get to fire clients, or you don't have to take them on at all, and those kind of things.
I feel like that's like a little bit down the road too, from when you first start, though, because I had to learn that the hard way. Like, when you're just getting started, you almost are like so desperate to have clients that you allow those bozos to be on your client list, and you put up with so much just like terrible, behavior from clients that you would never, like, now that you're like, well into your agency journey. Like, I have some nightmare stories of things that I allow, and then you learn where those red lines are, and when to fire clients, right? But it's all part of the journey. At the beginning, oh my God, I had some bad ones.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Okay, so in your book, you talked about work jail. How do agency owners get there? Is it just a matter of, wanting to be hands-on with everything, or is it just not fully understanding that you don't have to?
I mean, there's a couple of things. I've always found like the biggest thing actually that I think most agencies lack is only about 50% of what we do is actually delivering results. I've heard this time and time again, just figure out how to get results for clients and everything will work itself out. If you figure out how to run the ads and make people money and you can show a return on investment, and that all sounds cool. But if you've ever been fired by a client who you're getting like 10-to-1 return on their money, and you're like,
yes. Yes. Oh, I'm so happy to talk about this.
Yeah.
Keep going, because this is a really important topic.
And, you know, it actually occurred to me what this whole thing was probably a couple of weeks ago, because I was talking to, I'm in Mexico right now. I'm living on the beach here in La Paz, Mexico. We've been doing the nomad thing for a while. And one of my
Sounds
neighbors,
rough. Sounds
yeah,
really rough.
we got a hard
Terrible.
lifestyle here. So my neighbor was buying a house here, and there's a large number of like retired Americans down here. And I asked him what it was like buying this house. And he said, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. And I went, what do you mean it was one of the worst experiences of his life? And what ended up happening is he bought the house sight unseen. He'd always had this dream to live in this area. So he bought it, and he sent like, I don't know, like 300 grand or something like that across the world to get the second home in Mexico. And then he couldn't find out what was happening. So for like 6 months, he got like basically no updates. And every now and then when he would get an update, it was in Spanish. It wasn't easy for him to translate. And so for 6 months, he just had no idea whether his house was going to get built. He comes down here, finds this house, and it's perfect. Like everything's done to spec the way it's supposed to be, no issues whatsoever. And you would think on the surface that everything should be hunky dory, right? The deliverable, the house was done perfectly. But what was lacking is nobody informed him and told him what was going on that whole time. So he was miserable. And I've realized that after years of doing this, that half of what we do is getting people results. I actually have a friend who's a ClickFunnels 2 Comma Club award winner, and he kept just spending more and more on his Facebook ads team, got people better and better results, and they didn't get any happier because the communication and the expectation setting stayed exactly the same. And so I've learned that most client headaches and most things that'll build you a prison are actually the gaps in the communication. And it's exactly like that house. Now compare that to, imagine, like, you know, this is not a real home builder, but imagine after a day, they said, hey, we just wanted to call and congratulate you for buying this home because, you know, you made a really awesome decision. And then a week later, he gets a message that says, hey, we just finished the land survey, and here's a little video of your land. And another week goes by, and they go, here's the foundation. We just poured the foundation. And a couple of weeks go by, and here's the frame. And he can see this thing being built, and he's proactively being informed. So what I found is that, you know, I used to think like clients were just really stupid. Like there's probably like a 5-year period where I was like, oh, they hire me to do ads, and then I do ads, and then they complain that I'm not doing it well enough. And it took me a lot of years to realize that it was actually me not informing them. I thought, hey, I send you a report at the end of the month. That's enough. Be happy with it. And so I would say, in regards to your original question, the biggest thing that I see keep people stuck is that sending the bare minimum monthly report and thinking, hey, if I just go get results in Facebook ads, everything will take care of itself. And in my experience, not so, because they're wondering, is my house being built? Am I being ripped off? Did I just send 300 grand to a drug cartel in Mexico and I'm never going to see it again, and that kind of thing?
This is so important, and not enough people are talking about it, and it is like so absolutely critical. Communication, like 99% of your problems can be solved if you just communicate better, right? Like the results are really important, but you're 100% right. Everything else is communication, expectation setting. And I have had that experience before where and it was quite a while ago now, because I've learned this lesson you know, several years ago. But you're right. If you don't let your clients know the great things that you're doing for them and how great they truly are, then they don't really have like a bar to compare it to.
Yeah.
Like many of them have never run ads before, or they've never, they don't have that benchmark in our head. Like we have that because we naturally know, because that's what we do. It's what we, you know, that's what we live, eat, and breathe, but they don't. And so they don't know if a 10x ROAS is amazing or not. Like I've had clients, you know, or I've had leads come in that left their agency, and you go and you look in the ad account and you're like, damn,
These guys are
they were doing good. Like, and you kind of go back to the client, you're like, so what are you looking for? Because it's just like, clearly that agency did a terrible job explaining what they were doing, because they were actually doing good. And that has actually happened to me before. And I even, you know, I talk to my own team to this day and remind them of this, like when we're going through, you know, our weekly rundown of our clients and the status of all of them. When we see, you know, really great results, I always am sure to, you know, remind the team, hey, let's drop a message in their Slack channel and let them know that they are, doing absolutely incredible. Like, here's our target and here's what they're doing. Let's just remind them of that, because it is really important to keep their expectations in line and let them know that you're doing good. Because otherwise, you're right, it can go totally out of whack. All right, this is something I definitely do want to talk to you about. In your book, you write about the 5 stages of agency growth. Can you walk us through those 5 stages?
Yeah, and Tyler, I'm sure you've been like anybody who's been doing this a while, been through them. And one of the really tricky things about the stages of agency growth and why it's so important is because you reach stages in your agency where what got you to a certain point will no longer be the thing that'll propel you forward. And so I see people, they'll take a certain stage as far as they can go. And then at some point, the business completely starts stalling out, and they keep trying to do the same things that got them there, which are not the things that'll move you forward. So, I mean, they're actually the same in any service business. I actually learned this first when we were mapping out the 5 stages of a law firm when I was in my niche, and I realized, holy shit, like 95% of this is exactly the same. The first stage is where you start out as a solo, and you're basically like a freelancer. You're a one-man show or a one-woman show, and you're everything. You're the web designer, you're the janitor, you're the CEO, you're the sales guy, you're the everything that's got to make happen. And usually what I find is the one thing that'll get you out of this stage is getting clients. And people do a lot of things that they think will get clients that aren't really important. Like, I've seen people who have a website that has exactly like 2 visitors, both their mother, every month. And they're like updating their logo and fussing with the website. But in this stage, you got to like make real offers to real human beings and get in front of people. And that's
Focus on the things that actually move your business forward. Yeah, and not get stuck on like logo design. Yes, we've talked about this many times. Go ahead.
So, I mean, that's stage 1 in a nutshell. You got to get in front of people, you got to make offers, and you got to close deals. And that's really the only thing that'll get you out of that stage consistently and quickly. But what inevitably happens is eventually you get good enough at that stage and you have to start hiring people. And that's when you reach stage 2, where you got a little bit of a small team, but you're usually still doing the work. Like, you're still actually running Facebook ads, you're still moving pieces. And like most people, when you get into the stage, you usually have no fucking idea how bad at hiring you really are, and how you just kind of, like, for me, like, I just did what everybody else kind of does, which is you interview some people and you got kind of a good feel about this person. So you hand them a job, and then you find out like 3 months into it that they just make your life miserable and they make your life harder.
Or just like don't get good results at all. I hired a contractor one time that they told me that their results, it was like this twin brothers ad duo. And I was like, oh, these guys are great. Like 2 for 1, basically. That was going to be looking at my ad account. They were working for a big agency at the time, and they showed me that big agency's results as a collective and claimed them as all theirs. And then I hired them as a contractor, gave them an account, and they just tanked because those results weren't theirs. Like, they didn't actually do that. Like, terrible. Sorry, I just had to throw in one of my. No,
I'm sure you've got some more too, and it's really funny. I actually remember once I had a virtual assistant from the Philippines, and I actually had to hire or fire him for watching cartoon porn on the job. What? Like, for real, like, we had the software called Time Doctor, and so it would upload a screenshot like every 15 minutes while they were at work. And the funniest thing was, it's not like Time Doctor just spies on his computer 24/7. You got to actually click, okay, I'm logging into work. So he knew. And
while that was on his screen.
Yes. I'm like, it's a very weird conversation when you're like, well, Raphael, I don't think watching a chick getting fucked by a cartoon octopus is actually part of running Facebook ads. Call me crazy, right?
Oh my God. Wow. That must be a really awkward conversation. I mean, a pretty easy outcome. I mean, obviously you're not going to continue to work with them anymore, but like, wow.
Actually, the story gets better because it was this weird thing where he was probably a person I wouldn't have hired in the first place, but he kept telling me like, hey, my mom's really sick. I think she had cancer or something, and I'll do anything that needs to be done. So I kind of took him on out of guilt. So I gave him a second chance, and he literally fired up the cartoon octopus porn the second day. So I didn't actually
fire the next day. Oh my God. and sent you a screenshot while logged into it once again the next day, knowing exactly how you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But these are some of the joys.
The second stage of agency growth. Wow.
Yeah. And then you're trying you're the one ultimately on the hook for all your client results. And you're like, well, we had a little hiccup behind the scenes here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But stage two, it's really interesting. I'll tell you what keeps people stuck in stage two, besides not knowing how to hire people, is a lot of B and C level players. Like when you get an F level employee, it's easy. You just let them go. They suck. A level people are easy because they wow you, but it's the B and C level people that are just kind of good enough, but not quite. Somewhere in that middle where they help you sometimes,
but they're holding you back at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is also, like, you get attached to the people that you work with, like we're human beings. So you get attached emotionally. And so it's hard to like let people go when you've built those bonds with them and you're growing your agency and, what have you. Like I've had closers on my team that, were with me from the beginning, but their numbers just like did not, add up to what we needed. But because they were like better in on the team, it just went on for too long. And I think that can happen to a lot of agencies.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just part of the growing pains of going through that stage. And then as well, I think not enough people, you mentioned earlier, the processes and the systems is, getting everything documented down into checklists. The more you have like a container where somebody can walk in and know exactly what they're supposed to do and what's expected of them and what they're going to be doing day to day, the more you're going to be able to get through that stage. But almost always you're going to make a few bad hires along the way, and you're just going to hire some people that aren't necessarily bad people, but they just don't make your life easier. I remember when my first agency was more geared towards SEO, and I can remember like I hired people to write articles, and then I would spend hours having to correct all their grammar and things like that. And then at some point I'm like, why am I hiring article writers if I have to sit and rewrite all the articles, right?
Right. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. So then if you reach past that, you go to stage three, and that's where you become a manager. And a manager is when you like completely remove yourself from all the day to day. And so you're not running any of the Facebook ads. You're not even prospecting or chasing after clients, and you're kind of just managing the business. And what ends up happening is almost always when you get thrown into that stage, you have no idea how you're supposed to manage people. And so what ends up happening is people just bring you things all day long. Like you'll basically hear, hey, do you got a minute? Can you help me with this? And all day long, people are just bringing you things. And what ends up happening is you become very reactive in the business because you treat all those things they bring you as equal when they're definitely not. And so a big way of getting out of that stage is you have to like know your 5 to 10 key performance indicators so that you're managing in the areas that make the biggest difference. So if you notice, like, for example, your sales have been slow for 2 months, it won't automatically tell you how to fix it, but you know where to look and you know how to address that problem. And you don't treat every little thing like they're equal, because otherwise somebody will go, hey, can you send me the Canva login? Oh, I'm stuck on this. We need to update this. This client's asking for that. And you'll manage all those things chaotically. And then the other thing too is, as you kind of mentioned, especially if you didn't understand like setting expectations with clients when there was just like a couple of employees and you, then what ends up happening is it'll be even worse the way you manage employees. And so they'll just come at you all day long and you'll just feel interrupted constantly. And like you said, you don't often realize you can enforce your boundaries. Like we just had somebody in one of our masterminds, he's like getting 50 hours, 60 hours a week where the incoming request as a manager. And he's like, and how did you deal with that? And I'm like, one of the simplest first steps is just to say, my office hours are Monday from 1 to 4 and Wednesday, and leave your request from these times. And you'll be amazed at how much stuff just takes care of itself. And then how you can then manage things in a way that's convenient for your schedule. So manager is definitely a tricky stage. And then you're also like have the added thing where you got to actually like lead a team and motivate people. And it's a little bit of a weird thing because usually we're all self-starters. So it's not like nobody has to wake you up in the morning and kick you in the ass to get going. You just do that on your own. So like sometimes it just like boggles our brain to have to do it for other people. Eventually, if you get past that stage, you get to like CEO stage where you're just managing a manager. Like you only almost have conversations with just one person or two people, your manager or managers. And you see this a lot at bigger agencies. You're not doing any of the day-to-day. You're just managing the business by numbers. Almost always what happens as you reach that stage, the the quality of your brand starts to slip, and all these little things start getting dropped. And also usually your team size, it'll start getting kind of like a high school with like little cliques, like, oh, Jenny got promoted because she went to Steve to go golfing, and like
Yeah.
shit like that starts happening.
Yeah.
And almost always in that stage, you got to go like back to the basics and make it all about the customer again, and like refocus the whole machine on all the fundamentals that got you there, but doing that at scale, which is kind of trickier. And then if you want to, you can reach the fifth stage, which I've never personally been in, but I just know people who have. And it's when you start building multiple agencies and you're copying your systems. And it's almost like franchising, where you have like the McDonald's challenges, where you're like, we've got this chiropractor agency. How do we make all the things that are working in the chiropractor work in the lawyer agency, and so
Yeah.
forth. And what ends up happening in that stage is usually you're running so much in ads that you're visible in your niches. And so what ends up happening is like just the sheer amount of opportunities that have nothing to do with your main core business just come out of nowhere. Like, and I'm sure you get that, Tyler, with your Facebook group, where everybody's got the latest, greatest, most amazing thing that's going to, you need to get in on this before it's too late. And sometimes it's hard just even deciding which opportunities to take.
Yeah. I think I
Yeah.
just like have just shut myself off to them.
Yeah.
Like, because they all read like spam to me. Like at this point, like I get so many messages of like, oh, I want to partner with you on this thing or that thing, or like, and like every time I've gone down that rabbit hole and like looked at them, like they're nowhere near like an equal of a level of an opportunity that they're trying to, that I am basically. And like, if you brought me like an opportunity where you're already somewhere and then you want to talk about like partnering on it, that's one thing. But if you want to partner with me so that I can then pull you up, it's like, what am I getting out of that, right? And I think a lot of those opportunities are kind of disguised as, hey, help me. Like they're hey, help me, but disguised as like opportunities. So they all just kind of get blurred out at this stage.
Yeah.
I think I really like though that map out: solo, small team, manager, CEO, and then multiple agencies. I'm like flirting with that last stage because I have another niche that I'm looking at, that I'm considering, you know, putting my current model into. But at the same time, like at the same time, I like my lifestyle that we were talking about earlier, the lifestyle agency. So if we do launch that other thing, the lifestyle changes, number one. And number two, you know, when you do that, like you're going to have to basically double your ad spend. And the business that the agency, you know, we're running right now, like we're already doing a ton of ad spend on it. And so, and we're not at the top yet. So I feel like there's a hidden danger in, you know, the shiny object syndrome, basically, and like starting another project before you've really reached your full potential on a project that you're doing really good at. So that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm like, we're doing good, and I want to just keep focusing on and scaling. So I think that's what I decided to do, is like stick to, you know, the agency at hand, scale this thing to the max, and then maybe potentially, you know, do the whole multiple agency thing. I think also on that manager stage, you don't have to get stuck there for very long if you hire correctly. You know, I got really lucky with a bunch of my account managers and my program manager, because they came in and were just phenomenal from day one. And like, I gave them some systems, but they created a bunch of other systems and documented all of those and created SOPs for the agency themselves. And you know, they own those systems and those processes. And you know, now as they bring in people under them and, you know, take over that managerial role themselves, it's easier and easier to teach the next person behind them. And so, you know, and a lot of those times, like I didn't create those systems processes, like the people that I hired for those roles did, which is just like fantastic. But if you hire and you have to create all those processes and teach them 100% of the time, then I feel like you're necessarily not always hiring the best.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in what you said. I think a lot of people get stuck more fundamentally than that, where they just don't even realize how important processes are, and therefore don't realize that they're missing them, especially because, like I said, to get to that stage, almost always you just got to be really good at selling. And so you can run ads, get a bunch of clients. And then I'll hear people when they get to the managerial stage, say, oh, agency model doesn't scale. And almost always it means they're doing it wrong, but they don't know they really believe it when they say it, because they have no systems and processes, and they're trying to manage a
Yeah, it's
team of
just
20
chaos
people,
inside
and
their
it's just
agency.
fucking chaos. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, no. If you hire right, like you'll bring in people with passion, for what you're doing and believe in what you're doing and truly want to help the clients that you're serving. And they also want to be as efficient as possible for themselves, right? Like your employees don't want to bang their head against the wall by doing all these repetitive things. So, like they'll recommend software, they'll bring in different things that make their lives a whole lot easier and thus the agency's systems better.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. That's genius what you just said.
Love it. All right, let's talk about mistakes because we all make them. What are the most common mistakes that agency owners make while getting clients?
To me, the biggest thing that I found is, and we're in a space in our agency where we've actually evolved to the point, and I've had a lot of help from mentors to get to this point, but we sell clients without a phone call. And it's taken me probably more than a decade to get to that point. And a big part of our secret is just to have an offer that's so easy to say yes to that it doesn't need a phone call. And where I think most people make the biggest mistake when it comes to getting clients is they have what I call a Me Too offer. And a
Mhm.
Me Too offer sounds like, hey, I'll run you some Facebook ads. Well, me too, but I'm going to run them better than the other guy. And so you're competing with like, hey, we're going to run it better. And I have a
Yeah.
little formula that I think it's a really good way for getting out of that box. I'm not saying it's the only way. I never want to like tell people there's only one way to be successful, but is pick a niche, like a broad niche. And then there's a concept in every niche, what I call that there's the nickel client and what I call the $100 bill client. And so like, let's
Mhm.
say you have a niche like dentists. A lot of people don't realize this when they tell a dentist, I'm going to bring you more patients. First of all, is dentists actually, they bend over people's mouths and they have all kinds of neck and back pain. So when you tell a dentist, like, I'm going to bring you more people, that sounds miserable to him. And most people bring them like your standard checkup, which they usually charge between like 99 bucks, 150 is pretty typical. And because of their overhead and all their costs, they make exactly $0 from a checkup. And a lot of times the patient thinks, what I just pay for. But
Yeah.
there's also in that same niche, there's like veneers and implants and things that are like $35,000 kind of treatments. And that would be what I would call the $100 bill. Now, in every niche, there's one of these. So in our case, like we're doing some stuff right now with motorcycle cases in the personal injury space, which is they're like $80,000 cases, right? So, and the other cool thing is it makes our life easier because like if I bring a guy 3 motorcycle cases a year, he thinks I'm a hero. If I brought him $300 traffic tickets, he thinks I'm a moron, right?
Yeah.
So taking that $100 thing in your niche and then building like a unique kind of system around it that just differentiates you. It doesn't have to like be reinventing the wheel. So for us, we got a little book, we got some email follow-ups, we got some Facebook ads. It's nothing like revolutionary, but there's nobody else who has like a system for motorcycle ads. And then we sell little packages of leads where they can buy just based on performance. And it's because of that, it's like, it's not a big thing to think about. It's like, hey, do you want more $100 bills in your agency? Yes, I do. All
Yeah.
right, well, let's get started. And so the biggest thing I see people do wrong, to come back to your original question, is they have really hard to sell offers. And this leads to getting ghosting, multiple sales calls, proposals. Hey, did you look at my proposal yet? Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay, what about this week? Did you read my proposal yet? How about next week? Did you read my? And you end up chasing because you have an offer that just sounds too similar to everybody else. And when you create what I call like a little mini monopoly, what happens is they can't quite get it anywhere else. Like there's a lot of people who could run Facebook ads for motorcycle cases, but as far as I know, we're the only ones doing that.
Mhm.
And because of it, like there's not really a lot of shopping around. There's nobody else they can talk to. If they want to get 10 proposals, none of those 10 proposals will have what we have on it anyway. And
Yeah.
so it makes your life a whole lot easier. And I think not enough people think hard enough about how to like really differentiate themselves and say something meaningful. Because if you do that, like the sales almost take care of themselves. And I used to like really try and overcome this getting client stuff with like, I'm gonna hire the best salespeople and I'm gonna have the perfect script. And those things all work. Like I'm not telling people not to do them. But I think there's more fundamentally easier things, which is just make the offer not so hard to sell. And I actually did this for years horribly, horribly wrong when I did SEO, because SEO is really the hardest offer in the world to say yes to.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's
It's
basically
so
like,
slow burn. Yeah.
it's like, give me a lot of money for a long time And
And
maybe
all one day.
one day, maybe, but no guarantees because Google's fucking crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And
It is terrible.
yeah, go ahead.
So so basically your big mistake is not having an irresistible offer.
Yeah, I think so.
And your example of an irresistible offer is within a law firm, you're offering performance-based Facebook ads specifically for motorcycle accident cases.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like I said, that's the equivalent of the $100 bill thing in their niche. There's one of those in every niche. If you have like some kind of irresistible way, we tend to treat like leads as if they're equal. Like I'm going to get you more patients. But if you
Yeah.
say I'm going to get you more $35,000 patients, that's immediately more appealing than I'm going to get you more $99 patients. And the difference is really what is it's a different landing page, a little bit of different copy. It's like you're not doing anything different on, Facebook ads side of things or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. No, having an irresistible offer is absolutely critical. And on my last episode, I was talking to an agency owner about offers, and his irresistible offer actually, because for he does digital marketing for like independent contractors, so like roofers and remodelers, construction, and their business is booming right now. Like right now, they have a lot of business. So but he's still selling like crazy, and that niche is doing really well because his irresistible offer is he offers a free brand new website with every sign up to his program. And all these contractors, like he found this gap because all these contractors, like they have like 1999 sites if they have a site at all, and it's just like
made on GeoCities.
garbage. It's just like absolute garbage because like they're like an electrician, like that's not their thing, right? And they've always had that on their mind, like they need a nice new website. So getting that for free, which he needs to do his job correctly anyway, like he needs them to have it right. So just like he has the people to do it, and so they do it for all the clients, and it just like it really helps propel his sales because they want that website, regardless of if they end up staying with them for more than 3 months or not, right?
Yeah.
So they come across the line a lot easier. So I think you're 100% spot on, like identifying, what is it within your niche that they truly want. Like we both know that they don't want Facebook ads or Google ads, like that. They're not buying that service. They're buying the end result. And to dig a little bit deeper, you're totally right. The dentist isn't buying more break-even clients, and the law firm isn't looking for low case values or cases that may not even qualify to work with them. So I actually worked with a law firm maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and we did they wanted me to do class action because obviously, like you said, it was like their $100 bill ones. And so literally like all of our efforts we're not focused on getting them clients. It was just specifically more people signed up for this big class action lawsuit. So I think you're spot on there. Touching, well, actually, let's move to hiring good talent, because we talked about that a little bit earlier, but it is absolutely critical. How do you find and hire the best of the best for your team?
I'll tell you, this is my formula, and I always put the asterisks on it. I'm not saying this is the way, but it is our way that is like worked really well for us. And it came to me because I realized actually we were having a conversation about just like getting jobs and in interviews, and somebody said, I'm such a good employee, but I always psych myself out for job interviews and I do such a terrible job. And I'm like, well, I'm the opposite. I know how to ace the interview, but I'm a shitty employee because after about 3 days, I'm going to realize all the stupid ways you're doing things, systematize everything, and want to go home early, right? So, and I realized that the way most people do hiring through interviews doesn't tell you shit. And Perry Marshall had this really cool concept. He called it the audition. He said, like, if you were going to go play with a new band, you wouldn't go, let's do an interview. Well, tell me about your last 3 bands, right? Like what you do is you get out the instruments, you play together, you make some music. And if you gel together, you make more. And if you don't, you don't. And so I'll tell you, I have had so much better hiring results with the trial first assignment and sometimes the trial second assignment, and just to see how you work together. And I've kind of like, I do it my own way where I create my own reality show. So if I'm going to like bring in a virtual assistant, I'll sometimes give like 10 or 20 the same like $5 or $10 trial assignment. And then after I have like that, I'll usually have like 3 or 4 who did a good job with it. And then I'll give those second ones a trial assignment. And I learned so much more by seeing them actually work.
Yeah.
And it's not done theoretically. Like I give them real stuff that I need to have done. And that has spared me so many miserable hiring experiences where somebody interviews well. And it's also better because now I don't have to do interviews. Now I just say, would you be interested in a little paid trial assignment? They say yes. I send it to them. Then I send them a little more to do. And I almost always end up with like 2 or 3 good ones out of that. And it's just been that's kind of been my secret for all of this for most of my employees. And then even still, after I bring them on, I always like to give them like a probationary period where they still have to work towards the job they
Yeah.
already have. I don't just go, okay, you're hired full time, just let's see how it goes. And that kind of mentality of where they have to keep earning it, I think just like really sets a really good frame. So that's been kind of my hiring secret.
I really like it. I have adopted that myself for my closers for sure. I learned pretty early on that you absolutely cannot tell who is going to be a good closer from an interview or even from past experience.
Yeah.
Like I've hired like 20-year-old closers that, you know, still live with their parents, brand new to sales, and they came in and were like closing 6 figures right out the gate. And it's like, what? And I've also hired, you know, the sales veteran who comes from like Grant Cardone, and he sold like massive packages and he did 2 million last year, and he comes on my offer and he can't sell a thing. He's dead in the water, completely terrible. And he was hyped up by the recruiters, hyped up by people on my team who've heard of them, like all this crap, right? And so, and what it comes down to is like the mindset and mentality of the closer themselves, right? Like what I didn't know, what was under the surface, was that guy was going through a divorce, like he had like all this stuff going on, and so like all the experience and everything, it just goes right out the window. So how I hire my closers now is basically in sets of 3. With the expectation to keep one, and we let them ride for a few weeks and get them on calls, because I've learned that you just absolutely never know from an interview. So like when I hire a closer, like that first meeting, they think it's an interview, and I always tell them like, by the way, you're hired. Like we're starting you, we're putting on calls, and they're like, oh. I'm like, yeah, not an interview. Like this is onboarding. You know, it's basically a sink or swim situation, and you know, if we're lucky, like 1 swims and 2 sinks. Every now and then we've had 2 swim, and it was really, really cool. But that's how I've done it as well. Touching on automation a bit, what are some agency systems and processes that will allow your agency to run without you?
Well, I mean, you kind of hit on it. I think there's like, to have like a truly like lifestyle agency, I think there's 3 things you got to hit. One is you got to have the offer that is easy to sell so that you can consistently bring clients in the door. Then you got to have like processes for bringing on a team. And like you said, systems and processes. And those are the third thing. And it's probably the most boring part of running an agency. Like I've never met anybody who like has gone through this and went, man, I just love doing this, where you're sitting and meticulously putting everything you do into a checklist and documenting it step by step. What's helped me a lot with that is we do all our checklists and processes on videos. So I do Loom. I just like slow myself down and talk myself through whatever I'm doing, and then get that in place. And one of the big benefits of that is not just that it makes your system more scalable, but it also, when you bring in team members, it's like, it's such a relief to them that there's none of this ambiguity, that they can log in and see exactly what they're going to do and follow the steps for there. And I think the more meticulously you can do all those things and have like a real, like one of my mentors used to joke that his employees said he had a process to go to the bathroom. And that's kind of what you want to take it to, is where everything is just laid out step by step, and you want to address everything with the processes. So what'll happen is almost always the first time you make a process, you forgot one little thing. And there's a temptation that when somebody comes and asks you to just answer it, because, you know, we're humans and we want to be helpful, but you want to answer it in the process, because that way it makes your employees kind of interchangeable. If somebody leaves, you can just direct people back to the process. Like if somebody leaves my company right now, like literally I'll have them the new person plop down in the sauna, and in 5 minutes they'll be up to speed without me even having to talk to them. I'll just assign them things. They watch the Loom videos. So that's the big thing I think that will take your automation to the next level, is breaking down what's getting you results and getting your clients results, and then like documenting that step by step very painstakingly.
So when your employee asks you a question about the SOP, which is a Loom video, standard operating procedure, SOP, then you re-record the Loom, or you just refer them back if it was already answered?
It depends. If it's just like one little thing, I might just like add like a little note, like
Highlight it was here in the video, or if it wasn't and you missed it, you'll re-record the Loom so that it's
or
there.
just put like little FAQ below the Loom video.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times we do re-record. I go into the SOPs with the expectation it's going to take me 2 or 3 tries to get them right, even though it's like kind of.
With my agency, like it's been awesome. You know, the original SOPs come from me, and then like I said, I challenge my employees and empower them to make them better, right? And so we've had many iterations of the SOPs built after mine that are, more efficient, better, quicker, from the people in those roles now, which is phenomenal. Keeping your client churn rate is also another really big thing in the agency space. How do you keep your client churn rate as low as possible and keep your clients happy?
Tyler, this is probably the best question of the bunch, because I think if you have an agency where you can't retain people, then you're actually, every time you take 2 steps forward, you're taking 1 step backward. And as far as I can tell, the average Facebook ad agency keeps clients about 3 to 4 months, which in my opinion is not nearly enough. And we're keeping clients right now an average of 2+ years.
Nice.
It's taken me a lot of years to really understand that. I'll tell you the 2 things that I think are the most important. And I'm going to assume when I say this that you're getting at least some kind of results for people. If you're getting like 0 results, your retention is just not going to be anything. Obviously. But I don't think what most agencies struggle with is actually getting results. It is setting expectations and then exceeding expectations. And I wrote about this in the book, but the expectations, it comes down to 4 areas when you set expectations. What are the results going to be? How long is it going to take to get those results? What kind of costs are going to be incurred, and how are you going to communicate? And like the more like transparent you can be in those 4 areas, the easier it's going to be. And we sometimes don't think about this. And I'll give you an example of like me screwing it up so you can understand. Like I had a friend who said, "Hey, I'm really interested in running Facebook ads." He's an accountant in Houston. He's like a really smart marketer, and said, he's not really an accountant, but he's like, "Hey, would you help me run a webinar on Facebook ads?" And he had run all kinds of ads. And so I thought he kind of knew this. So I skipped a lot of the expectation stuff I would normally do for clients. And one of the things, if you've ever ran Facebook ads for somebody who's never ran Facebook ads, what happens to their bill? Like Facebook bills them when you get to $2.50,
$5,
$5, $16,
$20,
$25.
They freak out. Yeah.
And always they freak out. They're like, "Holy shit, I've been billed 17 times by Facebook and we don't have."
Is this normal? Yeah.
And dealing with that is as simple as saying, "Hey, just so you know, you've never ran Facebook ads before. They're going to hit you when you spend $5, and it's going to look like a lot, but we're actually going to only have spent like $150, and that's just the Zuck testing your credit card over and over." But because I didn't do that, he was freaking out and deal with those kind of things. And then it's hard to recover from that, even though ironically, our Facebook ads were crushing it. Like he was getting like $3 webinar registrations. And I thought if we can get 10 to 20 with his kind of price point, we would be winning, and we're getting them for like 3. And I ended up losing him as a client because I didn't do those kind of things. So I didn't in the beginning understand how important expectation setting truly is and was. And a lawyer explained it to me actually really, really simply. He said, if I tell a client that I think we're going to get $15,000 and we get 10, he thinks I'm the biggest idiot in the world. And he said, but if I tell him I think we're going to get 10 and we end up getting 20, he's telling everybody that his lawyer is the biggest genius in the world. And he's like, I never realized that I get to set the framework. So when you tell a client results, if you think you're going to get them $10 webinar registrations, then you want to paint the picture of 15 or 20. And if you think it's going to take you 3 months to get results, then paint the picture of 6 months. And if you think it's you're going to incur a cost of say like $1,000 a month, tell them you want to spend up to 2,500, right? Like whatever it is, always shoot for like a way where you can exceed your expectations. And the other way that we're exceeding expectations and keeping clients, and there's an awesome book that I would love to give a plug for if it's cool.
Sure.
called Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. Everything that I kind of know about retaining clients is in here. And it's about creating client experiences that are above and beyond just like, hey, we run Facebook ads for you and we get some leads in your inbox. And so I'll tell you, it's all these little touches. Like when we sign a new client as part of our standard procedure, is one of the things we do is we send them a gift basket from Edible Arrangements. And I do it because they're just like, they're so fast. They're usually like, you can sign a client and Edible Arrangements will be there like 2 or 3 hours later going with a welcome package.
Yeah.
And we're doing that because we know like that's when they're going through buyer's remorse. Like, should I have done this? Am I going to look stupid? We want them to feel good about it. And it's all these little touches. Like I send my clients pictures of their kids as part of our thing. We have custom bobbleheads that we send them where they get to like put it on their desk because they're busy lawyers and they like seeing themselves. And we also have like, sometimes I'll just go off script. Like I had a guy who told me, he kept his first car forever because he bought it from his grandpa and his grandpa smoked a pipe and it smelled like his dead grandpa. So he kept this old shitty car for like 2-3 years after he should have got rid of it. So I went online and I found on Amazon, there was a candle that smells exactly like those pipes and order it to him. And those little touches are the reasons we're keeping clients 2 years, not because our Facebook ads are like the best performing in history.
Yeah.
So it's those little touches you do above and beyond this book. And, this book lays out a really good map for and Never Lose a Customer for what those stages are. And the more you exceed expectations at every point and do these little personal touches, the more it's just harder for clients to fire you. Like when they get a picture from their kids that shows up, like they're just not going to fire you and say, well, I don't know, the webinar registrations are up 75 cents, right? It just
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's really important. My agency has been doing that for several years now, and it absolutely does have a big impact on client retention for sure. Those little things. One of my absolute favorite gifts I've ever gotten from a company that I had on retainer was they sent me a t-shirt that had my face on it that they cut out from Facebook and like a superhero's body. And it was like me like doing like the superhero pose. It was so sick. Like I loved it. And I never forgot it either. So it's like those things are really impactful. All right. As we're coming up to the end of the hour here, let's go ahead and dive right into a question that I ask at the end of every podcast to all of our guests. What is the number one piece of advice that you would give to a brand new agency owner that is just starting out in the space?
We kind of touched on it a little bit. And I think, Jim Rohn said, find something meaningful to say it well, and say it often. And I think people skip step one a little too often, is that, especially the nature of how like people get into different, agency kind of spaces. A lot of times they find out, like through some course, hey, you can sell Facebook ads to local businesses, and then they just get into it, but they don't realize by sounding exactly like everybody else that you're fighting your way uphill before you even start. Yeah. And so I think just being a little more strategic and saying something meaningful, like especially for people who are beginning in that kind of stage one, is like 95% of your headaches will go away if you just have something that's easy to sell. And when you do that, like you'll get stuck on other stages. You'll immediately get stuck on delivery and things like that, and hiring and those things. But those are better problems to have. I'd rather have anybody getting started be stuck with like, how am I going to deliver these solutions at scale, than like, how am I going to pay my bills because I need to get a client. And I see way too many people get stuck in the how am I going to pay my bills because I need clients, because they just have offers that are hard to sell. So I would say, like, really don't skip that step. Find something meaningful to say, and build your business out of that, because you'll just make life so much easier for you.
So get an irresistible offer, hands down. I think that's really, really good advice. And then also, I mean, I would throw in there, like, communicate. I think the theme of this podcast episode was like 3-pronged. It was set clear expectations, communicate frequently, often, and clearly, and then craft an irresistible offer, and all your problems will go away.
Yeah. You'll have new problems, but better problems.
Yeah, the problems never end. We always have problems, but definitely, I think you'll end up with better problems. Frankie, thank you so much for joining me on the FAAB podcast. today and taking the time out of your day. I think there was a ton of value in here.
Appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me on.